We begin with Oliver Stone. He is a filmmaker who says he would rather not seek out a controversy, but his films like JFK and Wall Street and The Doors have made him one of the most controversial directors in Hollywood. He has now directed 9 feature films and has won Oscars for Best Director for Platoon and Born on the 4th of July. His new movie, Natural Born Killers, is a visual odyssey that he feels recreates a climate of madness in our culture. It stars Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, and Tommy Lee Jones, and it opens on August 26th, and I'm pleased to have him here. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
See, here's what, Oliver, this is going to be fun, there's this sort of mellowness when you come on the show, which seems to go against every instinct that I read about that you have as someone who, like a heat-seeking missile, is looking to do and cannot avoid controversy. You have now made Natural Born Killers, which everybody says, whether they like it or don't like it, say is bound to create controversy, including your own studio, Warner Brothers.
Am I supposed to comment on this?
Any of it. Go right ahead.
No, I think it's a film, I think, honestly, that you love or you hate. I say that's true. I think there are certain older folk that are just not going to go for it. And I think there are
older folk won't go for it, as if there's a generational divide here on this?
Some older people, such as yourself, might go for it. I
right.
don't know. It depends, if you take this literally, you might be upset. I think the film was intended satirically. I think the landscape that was just, when we started it a year and a half ago, this seemed very surreal, but it sort of happened as we were shooting. Beavis and Butthead were right. This came true. I mean, everything. A woman cut off a man's penis and was publicized for it and acquitted. 2 boys killed their parents in cold blood and admitted it and got away with it based on a child abuse. OJ, we have a figure skater that beat up another figure skater and made, national ratings. And I mean, everything seemed to come out into a public display of the private. Everything private was suddenly aired into a soap opera fashion that was fascinating and changed the nature of watching and listening, and in fact, a culture of surveillance. I mean, culture of gossip. And I think that is what our film was dealing with, and it just, what we shot became real as we were shooting it.
It began as satire and became
in
what?
In a sense, and became, I guess, more real, less surreal. And to be honest, I think the Mickey Mallory story, which we've described, could happen any day now. It could happen, and it would happen. These kids would be all over the newspapers, People magazine, they'd be the heroes for a couple of weeks, and I think that they would vanish. I think people would get bored with them, like the way they get bored with any story, and they'd move on to the next case, as is done in the film, as is shown in the film. So I think it's a pretty bizarre place we're living in, the 1990s, and I think it's a century of violence. It's coming to a conclusion.
It's coming to a conclusion?
Yeah, a conclusion.
And what kind of conclusion is it coming to?
I think something's going to, it's either going to reach absurdly new proportions, or else it's going to die out and people are going to get, sick and tired of this whole thing, and hopefully we'll move on into more sanity in our, in public, in our television, in our public behavior, and there will be less emphasis on the private, less surveillance. I don't know. You see more of these people than I do, but you live in this world. I don't.
The world of what?
I can go off and make another movie about another subject, but I think you live in this culture of surveillance. You live in gossip. You know what what do you think?
Well, I'll come to that in a moment, but I want to stay with this notion. Also, this is a reflection of sort of tabloid media. And the fascination with crime in our society. And when you have network television magazines are obsessed with the idea because it generates ratings of interviewing killers. Whether it's Jeffrey Dahmer, who hasn't been interviewed, but his parents and other people have, and maybe he has too. I haven't seen every interview that's been done out there, but clearly there is an obsession with violence, and violence is, on everybody's sense, the biggest problem in America. What drove you to do this? What brought you? What was it about your own sense of it that led you to seek this out? Because if you look at the movies that you have chosen, JFK, Vietnam, Born on the 4th of July, Wall Street, there seems to be what?
Well, I think, I think I tend to reflect what's around me. I'm sort of a bit of a circus mirror. I walk around and In this case, I was really trying to have some fun. I was trying to relax. I'd done a very tough film in Thailand called Heaven and Earth,
right.
True story, classical narrative. And here was a chance to sort of take a look at the road movie genre and the prison genre, which I loved. Papillon, Great Escape, Midnight Express, road movies. And combine the two and sort of stretch, do a little bit of American muscle car kind of movie and not be too serious. And inside the genre, play around with the format, technique, try different mixed media. We tried Super 8, we tried video, 35 millimeter, we did animation, we did a lot of rear projection. But we were really playing around with having fun, relaxing. But as it developed, and we were in this prison in Stateville, Illinois, and all these things were happening on television, it just became a situation that became more real, in a sense like the Wall Street movie, because it was inevitable what would happen at the crash, but when we were doing the movie, Gordon Gekko, all that, by the time we released the film, all of a sudden the crash happened. I mean, and people were saying, like, this is a prophetic picture, it's a social realism, but that happens if you explore a cause and effect. If you just go out and you try to be honest, and you sort of film what's being done in our society. You go to these prisons, you see the amount of subclasses in prisons, you see mass media building up, you see a mass prison system building up. This new crime bill, if it gets through, is about building more prisons, throwing away the key, putting the prisoners in. The police in the movie are corrupt. I mean, it's a satire, so all these forces are they're pictured broadly. We're not saying that all cops are corrupt or all media is corrupt or all prisons are corrupt, but in this movie they are. We're creating this sort of three-headed monster, pillars of the establishment. The establishment is corrupt, and we're positing these two anti-heroes who kill people, who in a sense emerge as purer phenomenon than the corrupt forces of the establishment, which is a very subversive statement, leading, as you know, at the end of the picture to basically a revolution.
All right.
I gave you all your...
Well, no, what I want to do, I want to take that and take a look here. I mean, this is the first clip we'll see, Natural Born Killers. It is going to be very controversial. It all opens on August 26th, directed by Oliver Stone, and here is a clip, and we'll talk more about it and about violence and about some of the things that are around us that reflect the curiosity of Oliver Stone. Here it is. Stay with the controversy for a second here. This is from the New York Times this morning. Exhibitors are nervous too, privately telling studio executives they're uneasy with a movie about two psychopaths on a killing spree and their avaricious exploitation by the news media, which turns them into pop icons.
Yeah, sure. I mean, exhibitors are over 60. They want the Lion King and they want True Lies. I mean, they always want the sure buck. I mean, I've never seen an exhibit. Very few exhibitors will go out there and back a film that requires. It's the studios making the movie, and they're really behind the movie. As of today, they've told me that they're getting more theaters than ever that they expected. They think it's going to open. Tremendous awareness this week from young male and young female. Like way ahead of the way above the average, and I'll tell you the truth, young exhibitors like the film. So I'm only hoping exhibitors are never wrong. Never wrong. They're the last ones to have the picture out there. They can't lose money. They got their popcorn side, so they're never going to take a chance with the picture.
Yeah,
that's not the reason great movies get made. Studios get the pictures made, and I got to say, Warner Bros. Backed the picture with me to the hilt. And they're spending a lot of money to open it. They're doing the proper advertising, and I think that they're fully behind it. A little nervous, yeah, because it's a tough picture.
Yeah, this is the same piece by Bernie Weintraub in the New York Times. We knew this film would be incredibly controversial, said one Warner executive. We realized that from the beginning. There's obviously a level of concern that it will polarize the audience. It could do that. Are you worried?
No, I mean, drama is supposed to be about that. I mean, do we really? I love The Lion King, but not every picture's got to be that. You can't make a film that's always popular with everybody. You got to take your shot. And you piss off some people.
Why did you use, I mean, the praise for it comes in part for the technique and for your genius as a filmmaker. It is, as someone said, more of a vertical film than it is a horizontal film. I mean, while that storyline is there, I mean, it just comes crazily at you. All right. Why that? What's the method behind the technique?
It came out of JFK, a lot of that method. We tried disassociative cutting on it, if you remember. Right. A lot of we tried to weave 4 stories into JFK, and I think we succeeded in making it a coherent narrative in a complicated film. In this film, I'd say we entered into it, relaxed. We said, let's try new stuff. We're inside a genre that's been done. There's no point in imitating what's been done. Let's try new stuff. Inside the heads of two killers, schizophrenic, hallucinatory. They're on the road. They're nuts. At the beginning of the movie, they're completely nuts. They're maniacs with a human face.
And they're worse at the end.
No, I disagree with you.
Where are they at the end?
I'm talking about style. So
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
It's tough. So the style represents what they see, and each time we don't know what's going to happen next in the first 30 minutes, like their heads. Then, if you remember correctly, when Robert Downey comes into the picture to comment on them,
he plays a tabloid reporter.
Yeah, he plays a guy like Geraldo or Steve Dunleavy, and
Steve Dunleavy's voice. It sounds.
Yeah,
like.
He studied with Steve.
Yeah.
It was very sweet to him, by the way. But I love Robin Leach. I think we sort of like he's the king. But when Robert comes in, we change the style of the movie again. We go to a slicked up TV style. And then when we have Tommy Lee Jones comes into the picture as that crazy warden, we go to Tommy Lee's point of view of things. And it's a crazy camera there. I mean, he walks down a prison cell. People come up to him. He doesn't hear what they're saying. He throws them away. So the picture is always changing style, trying to find not finding the reality of where we are in the 1990s. It is Beavis and Butthead. The end of the movie, I'm not going to tell you, but it's chaos, deliberately so. And the shooting is chaos. And where do they come out? I think the two kids change. The most radical change occurs in the movie. The only major change occurs when they kill a particular person at the halfway point. Mallory, Juliette Lewis, feels terrible about it, and for the first time expresses feelings of regret. She gets off the ride. She gets off the thrill ride.
This is the Indian.
Yeah, this is the Indian, Russell Means.
Right.
She gets off the thrill ride. They get busted shortly thereafter. They go to prison at the halfway point. And in prison, Mickey, played by Woody Harrelson, has feelings of remorse, and he misses Mallory. And he starts to create the feeling that love is the most important thing in his life, and he starts to change. And in the interview with Downey, which is sort of based on the Charles Manson interviews, you'll see a character who is honestly fighting between his aggression and his love. And I know you probably don't agree with me, but by the end of the movie, I think that love beats the demon. And I think that the reason Mickey and Mallory emerge as anti-heroes in a sense is because they love each other. And I think it's a love story.
And so that's their saving grace at the end?
It's the only saving grace we got.
They love each other.
I can't say I condone their killing those people, but at least they changed. Which they
loved each other, and that's the saving grace, that these two people who, this sort of 2 weeks of madness, they love each other, so that's the saving grace?
They love and they will not kill again.
But this is right after they killed.
I can't give away the ending. They kill for one reason only, because it's the only way to escape. Once they've escaped, they will not kill again.
How do we know that?
That's your call when you see the movie, but that's my feeling. And I think love will save the world, and I think love will save the 20th century.
These are interesting ideas. What baffles me in having seen the film and agreeing that it's controversial and it will polarize people is, in a sense, you come away from that saying that there is a redeeming value and these kids now love each other and therefore they're not going to kill again, and somehow there is redemption in that point for these people?
Yes.
All right, let's take another look. There's more to hear. Natural Born Killers. This is a report live from the prison where Tommy Lee Jones is the warden. Take a look at this. Here is one person who's seen the movie talking about it. I think that it's technically brilliant, but as a movie, I abhor it. I think it's awful and ugly and a complete waste of talent. All this sex and violence. He is like a dog chasing his tail.
Who said that?
Your wife, your Elizabeth.
Ex-wife.
Ex-wife.
That's
Elizabeth
why.
said that. There he is. That's the opposite point of view, is it? I mean, she succinctly tells the opposite point of view. This is not, I mean, you seem to want to spin this so that it's an age. If you don't get it, folks, you're too old, you're too whatever. And if you're young and hip like I am at 47, then you'll get it. That's the nature of it.
I didn't use the word hip.
Yeah.
I just said I get it.
You get it.
I believe in the power of love. I believe in the power of redemption. I understand the point of view that you want to build more prisons, you want to throw away the key, and you want to kill anybody who's murdered anybody. And in the Buddhist context of things, you're right. I mean, there is a certain, if you kill, you have to, you know, you're facing many soul lifetimes of redemption that you have to go through. But the solution to our present problem with our criminal bill is to basically punish everybody who's not going to work. Yeah. Society has to be fixed from the ground up. It has to be improved in the cradle, with education, with family relationships. Otherwise, if you remember in the movie, we show very clearly a generational violence that's passed down from father, from Rodney Dangerfield to Juliette Lewis,
yes,
from Mickey's father to her. But it's not. It doesn't. It's just not about that. It's also about. There's a scene in a motel where they're making love, and on the television you see violent movies, and then you see.
And over the corner is a woman tied up who they've brought and kidnapped to watch them.
Don't give away too much. Insects eating each other, and then outside the window, while they're making love and talking banally, you see images of the entire 20th century going by: Stalin and Hitler, and Armenia, and ecological devastation. And the point is that, you know, these two kids are the product, the flower, the corrupt fruit of the 20th century, which has probably been the most violent century in the history of mankind. Genocidal, faceless murder of millions and millions. And, you know, in a sense, we're all trapped in this century. So, you know, it's easy to say, you did the murder, I'm innocent. What we have to accept is that we're all united in this century. We're all part of the same planet. We are, part of us are the murderer, too. When we face up to that responsibility, then we want to fix all of society, not just our lives, not just protect ourselves, not just live in fear by the George Bush line about Willie Horton or Richard Nixon's law and order line, and just let's have more law and order, more prisons, more punishment, 3 strikes and you're out. You're not going to get out of that cycle. You're going to stay in a cycle of violence.
Democrats and Republicans were supporting the crime bill, which had, you know, 3 strikes and you're out in it.
I know. I think politics is fashion. It's not necessarily right thought.
If you tell me about the demons inside of you, if I may ask that. I mean, in a sense, your life, and there's a recent profile of you in New Yorker, which I found to be very good, but it, in a sense, it captures a filmmaker whose life is an exploration. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Each film, I think the 9 films, I've done 9 films in 8 years. It's been a real run for me, but it's been a run. I mean, I'm tired of it. I think 9 is a good number to kind of take a break. Each one has been different. Each one has expressed I've been proud of, like a child. It's no regrets about the 9. And each one, in a sense, has been a going away from, I mean, leaving behind. I mean, I made a film about my own life in Vietnam, Platoon, and then moved on into my earlier youth in Wall Street and pushed on into my heroism of Morrison and the Doors, and that led to...
The films become taking what? They are a reflection of you seeking something, or in a sense taking leave of something?
Taking leave and seeking, they both occur. You know, by the time you finish the movie, each one takes a year and a half. You've gone through a process, and you leave it, you know, and you become a bit of what you've done. And it's sort of a benchmark that tells you I was here, and now I can move on. I don't believe I've repeated myself in any of the 9, which I feel good about. I feel fresh each time out. I think that with Natural Born, yes, I think there was an explosion. I think there was some kind of wrenching, some kind of breaking out of a shell of an egg. I feel terribly free and relieved. Catharsized, or whatever you want to call it.
Catharsis from what?
You know, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not.
But you understand yourself. I mean, you have spoken well about with insight into what drives you.
Sometimes you don't understand yourself, and sometimes the reflections you get back from others help you. I think the New Yorker piece, which I don't see myself as that at all, but it's instructive to me. It tells me the way he sees me, and I listen. What you say. I mean, I can understand my ex-wife's point of view. I can understand your point of view.
My point of view is I didn't see love in this case as being redemption at the end, and that's a difference you and I have. And it seems to me that there is more of an evil and violence that you, with your gifts, might have come to. You know, but that's a difference.
Well, I've dealt with violence. I mean, I dealt horribly with violence on Platoon and Born on the 4th of July. I showed what one bullet can do to a spinal cord, and Ron Kovic's life. You know. I'm aware, very much so, what violence does, and I think we must think about it. When you have movies as good as they are, action movies, Speed or True Lies, I mean, You go and violence is used, action is used as just a gimmick to get you adrenalized to keep the project.
You couldn't make those movies, could you?
No, I can't. Now I
just
can't. Maybe
big
I will.
commercial films, but you in the past could not have done that. You had to be drawn to these kinds of subject matters.
There are consequences to violence. If you're an honest person, you can't have somebody get shot without realizing. It's interesting, in Natural Born Killer, you could say that I didn't deal realistically with violence at all. I took it as a cartoon because I'm not interested in that anymore. I mean, I was in Born on the 4th of July, but I'm saying, look, let's not deal with the victims. These kids kill 52 people. That's no joke. That's serious.
Yeah, but you created in a cartoon atmosphere in order to accomplish what?
To go to another level, to go to that satire level. Satire is distortion and exaggeration to make a point. You're thinking a lot about violence when you see the movie. Violence is on your mind. It makes you think about our culture.
Okay, but help me understand the point that, using the cartoon and the satire to take it another level to understand a point. I just want to hear from you what the point is.
10 words or less. I mean, it's a movie.
No, come on.
I think we've described the landscape in the 1990s where the media is chasing the violence. It's very intimate with the violence.
Is true. Yeah.
And overkill has developed, a loss of perspective. I think it's not just the media. I think the prison system. I think the police system. We're all kicking into the violence. We become the chicken and the egg. We're mixed. We're becoming, what's the word, when metastasize?
Yes, cancer.
Yeah, so the prevention elements are part of the committing elements.
This film ends, and you see these kinds of images that come from reality, from Menendez and from Tanya Harding and from a whole series of things, including O.J. Simpson. Listen to this from you on O.J. Simpson. The fact is, anybody who can cut through left tackle like he used to has got to have an aggressive demon. O.J. was too nice all the time, so one night he blows. You can't repress it. Anybody who's been through a divorce will tell you that at one point in their life they thought murder. No one's innocent. The line between thinking murder and doing murder isn't that major. Isn't that the point of natural-born killers, in a way?
Mm-hmm. By the way, I just want to preface that, and I told the New Yorker writer, if he is guilty.
Sure, okay,
I mean, assuming that he's guilty, but those words are only meant in that case.
Right,
yes.
I understand.
If
The
he
presumption
was,
of
I certainly can understand
goes to him.
there's a scene in Natural Born Killer when Woody and Robert Downey's interviewing Woody Harrelson, and it's, I guess Robert has a bit your attitude that he's better than Mickey. I've never committed a crime, he says. I've never done a murder. And Mickey kind of looks at him with a bemused look. He says, you're innocent. And Wayne says, yes, I'm innocent. I'm innocent of murder. And Mickey smiles at him cryptically.
It says we all kill or something.
Yeah, something to that effect. But we later in the movie go to a position where I don't want to give away too much, but the demon does come out of Robert. Yeah. And unknown to himself, he becomes a killer.
In order to pursue his own commercial ends.
No, out of a very wild, strong, demonic, primitive instinct, the aggressive instinct, which is in him. It comes out pure joy, pure exhilaration in the prison riot, I think. And I wish I'd done a lot more with it, but the ratings board got a little upset with that, so that was one of the things that gave them the most problems when Robert went crazy.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Of all the stuff that's in there?
Yeah.
Because, did they tell you? You got an R for it in the end.
They never tell you. Because it's subversive as an idea, that you, Charlie Rose, can suddenly become this primal beast and end up killing one of your guests maybe one day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, you know how it feels. Tell me about you, though, in terms of your own primal urge, in terms of how what you, in dealing with this subject matter and making this kind of powerful film, came to grips with in your own self. Have you thought about murder? Have you thought about...
None of us should feel ourselves...
Rage.
None of us should feel ourselves superior to another person for having committed a crime, because in us is the ability to commit that same crime. We are united, we're linked. I go back to that original theme I raised earlier, that we must have the humility to understand our brother or sister. In the murderer goes I. The kid that, the little black kid that kills somebody in the park tomorrow and, kills a nice, respectable person. You hate that kid, right? You want to kill him for what he did. You want to throw him away in jail. You want somebody... But, he has a reason, and you got to go back through his life and his pain and his suffering, and you begin to understand.
Here's what you said about O.J. Simpson as well. It's difficult, you said, thinking about him. I just think there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Sure, don't you? Haven't you felt feelings of violence at all in your life? Don't they come out? Haven't you had fights with people? Haven't you had aggressive feelings, or are you sublimated to Are you pinstriped away? Or do
No,
you feel
neither.
neither
but,
one? You
but
have
you
no,
don't score points either for trying to take those kind of shots.
I think aggression, I mean, it's in all my movies. I think that we'd have
Why
to deal
is
with
that?
it.
It's in
It's
all
in
of
Wall
them.
Street. I mean,
The
in Wall Street, nobody gets shot. They just, the aggression is there in the verbal and the tongue. I think it's a way of life.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, you're out in nature much. You see all the bugs are eating the other bugs. Everybody's out there, ripping, shredding. And I'm not for it. It is a Darwinian world, but it's also a world capable of love. And this is the big conflict in our lives, love and aggression.
You say in the New Yorker article that you are starting life anew, that you are starting another life. You're at a crossroads. You're asking yourself, who am I? Why am I here? What is my anger? What is my fear? You're getting a little bit more perspective, having a little bit more fun. What do you mean?
Pretty much that. I think it speaks for itself. As I said, made these 9 movies in 8 years. It's nice to slow down a bit. I haven't been on a set since last August. We finished shooting. It's been a year of editing on this movie. It's a dense movie, 2,500 images, 3,000 images.
I mean, clearly this is a movie that
Big
was
editing
made
Yeah.
in the editing room.
And so this is nice to not feel the compulsion to shoot, not to feel the compulsion to do anything, to not do, to release myself, relax myself from my own demons. That's not to say they're all going to go away.
There was a period that, but do you know them?
I think I can spot them better, yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are they?
Well, I'd rather not get too much into, let's say they're elements of fear and anger, greed, ignorance, what the Buddhists call the 6 realms.
Yeah.
We're all moving through those 6 realms all the time, but I recognize a lot of those things which I felt before, but I wasn't able to maybe grasp, put my hand. When fear comes up, which does regularly in my life, in many of our lives, I'm able, I think, to spot it sooner, and recognize it and acknowledge it and say, welcome, you're back, my friend. Let's talk.
Fear. Yes.
Yeah. Let's recognize the fear. Why am I reacting the way I do? Why do I panic on a situation like this? Why do I get upset? Why do I let the stress get to me? Why do I need control all the time? Why do I have to say what I said at that moment? I'm just trying to live in more awareness.
And what has Buddhism done to?
It's just a practical way of being aware of how you move through life, and just being aware of it as you're doing it. Not to say I am at all times. I'm just an incipient Buddhist, but just working on awareness. Full awareness is the greatest pleasure of all. I mean, Henry David Thoreau, who was not a Buddhist, said the same thing years ago, that full delight in your senses will give you the best life of all, just to be aware.
Yeah, to know your senses, to feel the senses.
Yeah.
When you when you look at the movies back in terms of the sort of the success, you had that whole run there, with 2 Oscars for directing, 1 Oscar for screenplay for Midnight Express. After you, and then all of a sudden the last film was not successful. That happened. This one is controversial, and we don't know how it's going to go. It clearly is going to attract attention, and that may itself be an incentive for people to pay attention to it. Secondly, wanting to know what is all the controversy about. Noriega didn't work out. Evita didn't work out. What's going on?
Well, I think it was generally a good thing. I still love Heaven and Earth. I think it's one of my best films. It's spiritually mature.
Do you understand why it didn't work at the box office?
Yeah, I think so.
Just what, the subject matter?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I traced the film around the world. I just wasn't in America. I went abroad, and we did much better in Asia. We did not so great in Europe, but better than the States. I think in America there was a Vietnam syndrome, and it was perceived without being seen as me going back to a same subject. However, I think I broke new ground in the movie. I think the issue of dealing with an Asian woman who, in her reactions to her adversity was stoic by Western standards, was difficult for an American audience to grasp. In other words, it's easier to get behind a Joan Crawford figure if she's emotional and she's reacting in a strong way. The woman, Lei Lee, is more Buddhist and more accepting, so it's a little difficult to have an Asian female subject in an English language film. I think that's a problem.
I got less than a minute. I mean, Evita and Noriega, which of those would you rather have made?
I feel good. I feel relieved that neither of them have been made at this point, because the budgets in Hollywood have gone a little bit nuts right now. The last few films, the big films, are costing $120 million. I don't want to make a picture that costs $60 million. I don't care, because it puts enormous pressure on me to have to open it on a one-weekend basis. And it's you have to get a simplistic approach, man with gun, action.
How about a small love story?
Yeah, but nothing small. As soon as you get a star, you're into a $40 million, $50 million movie.
And you got to have a star for...
Not necessarily. I mean, I'd like to downsize. I would like to, but I'm trying to figure out a way so I don't feel that first weekend pressure. So I'm happy, in a sense, not to have made those films, because I think it would have been rough for me.
All right. The film is Natural Born Killers. Stephen Schiff of The New Yorker said the most radical film that any major studio has released since A Clockwork Orange. Natural Born Killers has gonzo brilliance. It plays like an avant-garde essay on the roots of violence. It's an indictment of tabloid media. Is unprecedented. Also from other reviews that Oliver has brought to my attention, there is praise for this. I've also seen reviews in Rolling Stone and other who have been hugely critical of it, but it is a film that will attract attention, and it is always a pleasure to have Oliver Stone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.